You're burning time and spinning on projects because you haven't learned these 5 things. But I don't want you to feel bad, friends, because it took me a decade progressing surgical robotics at J&J to figure it out. So hey, pretentious engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but I'm just hanging out in the Odyssey. My daughter is in speech therapy class, and I'm parenting Akio, and I'm super busy. I'm a father of 4 kids. I do full-time entrepreneurship, and I used to do engineering and global leadership in Japan. So I've gotten very, very good at time management, and I'm ruthless at strategic prioritization. So I want to share 5 things you can actually apply right now. This isn't all the like frou-frou block schedule and just focus kind of stuff. This is real tips and words you can use within industry to get faster and be more focused. So the first one I want to share is a question I learned in surgical robotics from an incredible boss and manager, Kevin. Shout out to Kevin. And he was under incredible pressure from senior leadership to accelerate a robotic surgical platform. So we were working on instrumentation for that platform, and we were asked to, shave days, weeks, months, years off of schedule. And it was one of those projects where time was the most critical resource, not money. So we were burning money like crazy on the order of like millions, and doing billion-dollar acquisitions and crazy stuff. But one of the things that Kevin would do was a question. Whenever he was experiencing a pressure to accelerate and cut time off, rather than just saying, yeah, the team can do that, and then putting all the load on us, he'd actually sit down with each individual team member and ask a question like this: what would it take to blink? So for me, because I owned robotics controls, it'd be, what would it take to shave 8 months off of design verification timelines? Which was a huge ask, right? Like, it forced me to think, like, how would I take 8 months out of this current workflow that's projected with all of these test automations that we have to navigate? But what's great about a question like that is it instills value on the people you lead, that I am the expert in my space. I know the work that needs to be done, but there may be an additional resource or other capabilities we can build out that would enable us to move faster. So it actually gives dignity to your team members to trust that they know how to solve their own problems. And it also provided him, this is the secret sauce of this question that you can leverage, it gave him a clear understanding of the nuance, like getting in the weeds, like what's really blocking the team. But then also, like, what are the unlocks, whether it's a person, whether it's an expertise that's missing, whether it's just extra time to accelerate things through a consultant. So one of the best questions you can leverage is, what would it take to blink? And if there's another cross-functional partnership you're working on and somebody's not getting the work done that you need advanced, you can start to ask that to them as well, because it helps them become a little bit more focused. Like, oh, well, if I had alignment from my executive leadership on this, then I could do that this fast. I was like, oh, well, now I have the information. It's a secret power. So what would it take to? Number 2, by the way, I have these all written down on a notepad, so I've put some thought into this for you. Where does blink fit in overall prioritization? A little bit wordy, but incredibly helpful. So a lot of times for me, I was a systems engineer. So I owned all these risks and requirement cascades for a portfolio of risted tools, and my workflows touched design engineering, quality engineering, global strategic marketing, clinical engineering. Who else did I interact with? Robotics controls, other systems engineers from different areas, all trying to cascade all these requirements and figure out what's essential to this platform so that it's safe and we can prove that it's good. Where does it fit? Where does blink fit? Let me try this one more time. I'm talking fast. Where does blink fit within overall prioritization is critical, because when somebody is saying, hey, I need this done in the next couple of days, or can you progress this piece of code, or why don't we have these requirements done? When you're getting pressed from multiple cross-functional partnerships, it's actually easy for us to feel the pressure to just say yes to everything and then get strung out, overwork, and underdeliver, versus if we say, like, no, I can't do that right now because I'm too busy, that really hurts our reputation. Because being too busy, like, everyone is busy. Everything's critical, right? So what I love about this expression is it actually maintains a sense of, like, reputation, and it helps reflect back to the person asking the request if it's actually a valuable thing that needs to happen and when it needs to happen. So if someone's asking you, hey, I need you to do this extra test automation and get us data on this aspect of the device, I could ask, where does that automation and the answer we get from that fit with an overall prioritization? And I could even give them some trade-offs of like, I'm also progressing this critical test method. I'm also progressing these conversations with these partners across these 3 pieces. Where does blank fit within prioritization? And the amount of times I've used this and have the person retract the work request is insane. Like, people ask you to do stuff that just doesn't need to happen. By the way, he's okay. He just bumped his head. That's why I glanced over. Like, you'll be asked to do things that people think is critical, or a document that has to get done. Like, there are seasons where we were all trying to do documentation, and then the whole platform got canned, and we didn't need to do that documentation. So I started asking questions like, hey, why do we need to do this right now versus getting these answers to decide if this project even needs to exist? And it was like, oh, maybe we should do that to get those answers to decide if this project needs to exist, right? So where does it fit with an overall prioritization will make you seem like you know how to prioritize well, strategically. That's a bag of pretzels, buddy. And it's kind of a superpower because it helps people see that you're ruthlessly focused on doing the right work well and efficiently. And it puts the responsibility up a level to make the choice, and then you execute the work. So try it. It's awesome. Like, write it down and do it. Yeah, I know. It's pretzels. I gave you. You want more pretzels? All right, we're taking a momentary pretzel break. Meanwhile, this is a great time to plug my community on Skool. So, hey, if you're trying to build the life you desire, living where you want, loving what you do, and being paid well for it, I have a community of big brains. They're engineers, global leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, community builders, parents. It's a really interesting blend of folks. We have 128 people there, and I bring them through a methodology to baseline where they're at in their unique journey concerning like how undefined it is. Do they have a lot of unknown unknowns? How disorienting is the journey? Do they know the next step forward? And how isolating is it? Do they have people around them that have seen the success they're looking for? And I bring them all together and we push them forward together. It's awesome. If there's a link in the bio, it's completely free, besides the time and the work you have to put into it to actually build the life you desire. So that's a fun plug. He now has more pretzels, so we can get on to number 3. And I drew a picture for you. It's a circuit. A project is a circuit of resistors. And what I mean by this is a circuit here. We can show. Oops. All right, so this is your voltage. This is your current. These 2 resistors will steal some of that current, some of that energy, and they'll dissipate it. Typically it's heat, right? And then this one, R3, is another resistor. And when you're calculating V equals IR, you could determine what current goes through each of these resistors in each path. And I'm not going to get into that, but these 2 are in series. So the current goes from R1 to R2, but also the current has to make a choice. Does it go through R1 and R2, or does it go through R3 to get back to the return path? A lot of times when we are progressing different projects, we'll be asked to accelerate. And there's kind of this idolatry of time. Come on, bud. I shouldn't have given him a bag. There's this idolatry of time that if you just throw money and people at it, it's faster. And that's not always true. It's not always efficient, and it adds a lot of risk and complexity to whatever you're building. So one of the first things you need to figure out is what work can be progressed in parallel with additional people or resources or external consulting support, and what work needs to be done in series or sequentially, because the answers you get from one piece of work inform the next path forward on the next piece. Because you're always going to have things moving in parallel. Like when I directed innovation from Japan, I was based in Japan, I traveled the region, I was connecting with clinicians, it was epic. I'd led like 32 people to progress AR and VR tech. One of the awesome things we did is we worked with an external consultant to develop technology in parallel to us gaining insights in the field. Those were 2 things that could move side by side effectively. So when you're trying to break down a project and what's important, I would encourage you, grab a whiteboard and a couple people, literally draw a circuit of things in series, things in parallel, and have these questions on, could this work that's in series be moved to parallel? And if it was moved into parallel, what are the risks and what are the resources necessary to accomplish that? Because a lot of time leadership will expect everything to get pushed to parallel to get speed to market, which is critical, but then they won't, if you're not a good leader leading up, you won't ask for the right things to actually make that a possibility. And second, The leadership may say they accept the risk, but they really don't when you fail. And there's really high risks associated with this. I mean, a beautiful example of this is the race to get the vaccine for COVID-19, right? Traditional vaccine development would cause you to first do your first in-human clinical trials, which is with first you develop your compound, and then you do your first in-human clinical trials with a very small sample size to see if there is, I'm gonna see if I get this right, because I work more in med tech as opposed to pharma, like if there's efficacy. No, the first one, I think you're just looking to see if it's safe. Like, does it kill people or not? Like, what are the risks of it? And then you'll do a slightly larger clinical trial, which is looking to see if there's efficacy. And then the third one, fact check this. This is off the top of my head. And then the third one, like you do a very large sample size. You want to see, is there efficacy and safety, like the combo. And then when you get all those answers, all those checkpoints, that's series work, you then kick off mass production and scale it. And that's why pharmaceuticals take years, sometimes half a decade or longer to progress. The race to the vaccine was subsidized by the government so that once there was a formula that was promising to move into phase 1 clinical trials, they kicked off production in parallel at massive financial risk. Because if you fail clinical 1, or the first clinical trials, or the second one, you can't go back and unmanufacture all those solutions. So the government subsidized this with different technology companies to actually have a couple that would win. Like J&J got lucky-ish. That's a whole conversation. Moderna, Pfizer were the winners, but we don't talk about the losers in this. But the losers wouldn't have ever even taken that risk financially unless the government had their hand on it. So it's important when you're communicating with leadership that you explain clearly, this is what it will take in order to move this series work into parallel. This is the risk. Do you accept the risk if we fail? And then you get to follow through and see if the risk pays off or if they accept the risk when you fail. And a lot of times this is because people can't approach projects this way with transparency. This is where infidelity is the wrong word. This is where dishonesty shows up within R&D, because people aren't brutally transparent about, we are taking something that should be serious and making it parallel. These are the risks, and it doesn't work out. And then surprise, surprise, you get down the line and you have a catastrophic R&D failure and the platform doesn't work. This happened in robotics at J&J. I can't divulge all of it, but I will say we went from progressing one robotics platform to then acquiring another, I think a $6 billion acquisition of Auris Surgical, progressed that. And then we ran into an architecture issue that was progressed at risk, with all the instruments being progressed at risk. And I won't share much more than that, but that killed the platform and we jumped back to the other one and progressed it forward. So stuff like this impacts like literally billions of dollars. But for you, if you're running a community on Skool or you're an entrepreneur, like look at all your work, map it out in series and parallel, and start asking, like, if I just spent $1,000 working with this person, would it accelerate something that I could do in parallel path? Am I willing to take that financial risk in order to see a return on investment soon? Like, you can play with small numbers and time to get something financially off the ground faster versus doing everything yourself, series as a solopreneur. So that's another area of exploration. Okay, let's get to number 4, providing context and escalations. And I actually need to check my clock to make sure I haven't missed pickup. Ooh, we gotta talk fast. We're good. We're doing good. So number 4, providing context and escalations. Often decisions are made at multiple levels within an organization. And if you're an engineer on the bottom, like I was for many years, you start to learn that people have to carry your story for you. You have to talk to your boss, who talks to a director, who talks to a VP, to escalate a scenario. I did multiple escalations. I'm very, very good at it. And in order to escalate, you have to provide the right data, the right situation, and context, but not all the context. This is what a lot of people get wrong. You have to recognize that people at different levels in an organization need different information to make a decision based on their trust and their know-how. So what would be really helpful is you literally map out all the stakeholders. I'm talking like whiteboard or Excel. Map all the individual people, map out what they want, or even like the constraints they're navigating, because senior leadership is navigating the constraints of, we want something to move forward as quickly as possible at the highest quality with the lowest resources. Like, that's the optimization problem they're navigating. And there's always give and take in that based on risks and challenges you run into. So map all these people out, map what they want, map their constraints, and then map the what would it take to answers. Like, because that's informing what they want. Like, if they want this thing and they have these constraints, what would it take to get them the thing they want? And write that answer. It would take 2 more headcount. It would take an extra 20 weeks on schedule to give you this feature, right? Those are like marketing decide, oh my God, we actually need this thing too. And it's like, do we really need it? Because it's going to add scope creep. Those are wonderful words. The next column would be, where does blank fit in overall prioritization? It's likely that different stakeholders across different levels of leadership have different prioritizations that aren't aligned all the way at the top, because no organization is perfectly synergistic. So you need to start to figure out, where does this blocker fit within their prioritization, because you might need to have individual slushing negotiations to move things up in prioritization, because it's blocking the whole platform from moving forward. Again, I'm speaking in robotics language. And then the third piece is to help them understand the resistor, like that the project is a series of resistors in a circuit. Yeah, I know, it's getting rough. It's hard, isn't it? Time management. But if you manage your time, you get more time with him, right? Well, you don't, he's mine. But helping them understand, like mapping out per person where they might have an assumption. It's just eat the pretzel. God. Helping them understand where they have an assumption that something that is series work can easily be done in parallel, and helping them understand the risks associated with that. And then you have to figure out at each level, how much context do they need to inform their decision around that prioritization context and pieces. And then hand that whole thing to your boss. Don't just tell him a story to get him off your back, or her, sorry. But give them the full context of, like, this is how you see the world, the organization we're in, the challenges we're navigating, and what these people seem to want, what I can deliver, what it would take to do it, where it fits within prioritization, and the series of resistors. And then you'll look like a genius on time management. And it's only going to take you like an hour in a conference room to map it out. All right, so that's number 4. Now, number 5, the last one, the big one. And again, pause this video. If you want to chat more with me and you want to hang out with an awesome community, click the link and go hang out in Skool, because I don't know if YouTube will ever bring us back together, and I'm there on Skool every day. So feel free to check that out, and then I'll see you inside. But let's get on to number 5, the last application. Essentialism and contentment. There's a beautiful book called Essentialism. I don't agree with everything in it, but it's really about putting all your effort on what's most essential and gives you highest leverage towards progressing towards whatever's most important to you or to the platform or to the business. It is very important to prune off things. I tend to dabble and wander in discovery, which I actually think is super important, but I've also ruthlessly focused on leverage in other spaces so that I create margin to wander and discover. I think you need both. But the other piece of time management is contentment. It is literally being okay that I wrote it down, finding commitment that actually, if you do less, you are okay with that. That you don't have to do it all in every single thing. You don't have to check every box. The hardest thing is when you start progressing work and decide it's not as important, and you just stop it out of choice. The completionist in us really wants to find it. I grew up playing Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. I had to get every gem, every crystal, 105% or whatever it is. Like, I max things like that. But when you're building your own business, letting things burn to focus on highest leverage and doing nothing else so that you have space to think and breathe and be present as a father, like, that's really hard. And you're gonna wrestle with it if you're used to just perfectionism and always pushing forward at expense of self and at expense of family, which I don't subscribe to that. So anyway, I subscribe to you, and I'm rooting for you. I genuinely care for you wherever you are in whatever context. And I hope that you find one of these 5 tips deeply applicable, and favorite the video and circle back to it in the future, because everything shifts in our life, and I'm sure there's something here that you can glean and apply. So let me know in the comments below, like, which of the 5 is most helpful to you. Number 1, what would it take to? Number 2, where does blank fit within overall prioritization? Number 3, a project is a circuit of resistors. Number 4, providing context for escalations. Number 5, essentialism and contentment. And you could also comment what you'd like to hear me chat on next. I'd be happy to help. So I'm gonna go pick up my daughter, and I'm gonna go be a dad and not an employee. I'm gonna go do a whole bunch of fun stuff. I'll see you in the next one. You can sip on that.